Brian's making a 1-hour pizza from scratch. Let's see how this turns out. Highly recommend seeing his channel after this video. He does a really good job and you should definitely follow him if you haven't done so already. And if you're not following either of us, then be sure to do so and hopefully you will enjoy this video. Now, let's get started.
I'm gonna grab a little saucepan like this one, and into it I'm gonna measure 210 grams of beer. I prefer beers that come in green bottles like this one, but any beer that you would drink while watching a sports game is also gonna work. This beer is icy cold, as you can see, and that's not gonna be great for fermenting bread. So we're gonna heat this over low heat over at the stove for roughly 20 to 30 seconds, or just until the temperature reads in the ballpark of about 98 degrees Fahrenheit or 36 C.
It is interesting though. I think that Brian is using a beer because one, it's already been fermented, so you do have the flavor from the yeast, and I think he's using more of a lager. He took the label off so we can't tell, instead of an IPA or a pale ale, because those beers have a very strong hoppy flavor, especially IPAs. You do have to cook off the alcohol a little bit though, this is one thing, and you do have some residual sugars that are still left in the beer, not many, but when making beer, all the malt that you add to it is very sugary, and the yeast feeds off of that, converts that into ethanol, or alcohol, and then you end up with an alcoholic beverage.
Now I'll grab my favorite tool for making dough quickly, that's the food processor, and into the bowl of that goes 350 grams of strong all-purpose flour, 5 grams of salt, 8 grams of sugar, 7 grams of yeast. That's about double what I would normally use, but we only have an hour here, and 15 grams of olive oil.
Now, of course, if you don't have a food processor at home, a big enough one to do this, you can do it by hand. It's not an issue. And also if you have a mixer. Now, of course, if we're going to be making a proper like Neapolitan type pizza dough recipe or another dough recipe, we're not going to be adding sugar to this. This is like a big no-no. But if you're in a pinch and you need to make it in an hour, it's a bit of a cheat. And it also depends on what type of yeast you're going to be adding. Active dry yeast, any of these. It matters.
So the lid goes on, and now I'm going to spin this up on high speed for about 20 to 30 seconds or until everything is well combined. Then while this thing is still spinning, I'm going to stream in this warm beer slowly. After 10 to 15 seconds of spinning, that beer is going to hydrate the flour and form a nice shaggy little dough ball like this. Like I said, the food processor is a really great tool for mixing doughs quickly, so long as the dough is below 65% hydration like this one is.
We recreated Adam Ragusia's pizza dough recipe that he's been trying to perfect for the past decade. Literally 12 years. He still changes it every now and then. And well, we had a bit of an issue with the measurements. They weren't quite accurate. If none of you have seen that video, be sure to go and check that video out after seeing this one.
Finished developing the gluten in this dough. I'm going to flour my cutting board real quick, flip out the dough, and then give this dough about 1 minute's worth of simple kneading back and forth like this. Now is a good time to mention that the beer in this dough is there to stand in for all the yeasty flavors that we would usually get from long, slow fermentation with yeast. I saw this move in a Cook's Illustrated magazine years ago for rolls or something like that, and it stuck with me as a clever shortcut to yeastiness ever since.
Just keep in mind though, if you're going to be adding like a really strong IPA to this recipe, you're going to be tasting the hops more than you will be the yeast. Let's just put it that way. And if that's what you want, that's fine.
For that, I've got my digital scale here, of course, and I'm going to cut these into 2 equal-sized pieces that are roughly 300 grams apiece. From there, I'm going to shape this dough into 2 matching round balls real quick. And don't worry about getting them rolled up into super tight, pretty pieces. This recipe is very forgiving and will definitely let us play it loose.
We need to see more recipes from Brian because he does a very good job explaining the fundamentals of the recipes every step of the way, and also making it easy to understand every step of the way as well.
Now we're going to cover them with a tea towel and let them rest up on the counter here for 15 minutes. After that 15 minutes, this dough is fully relaxed and maybe a little bit dry looking. That tea towel probably should have been damp, but it doesn't matter, as you're going to see in a second. We're headed right into the shape the balls into pizza part, and to do that I need a large square of parchment paper.
Anytime that you're working with dough, it's very important to allow the dough to rise and to give the yeast time to feed, because if not, you're going to end up with a very dense dough. And for a quick reference, normally a pizza dough recipe calls for a few hours to up to a day or more to actually allow the dough to rise.
Spread that oil edge to edge, add a dough ball into the middle, and then add a second piece of parchment paper onto the counter here. Hit that with some oil, spread it around, and then finally flip that oiled parchment onto the dough. Using my hands, I'm going to smash this dough down into a roughly 6 to 8 inch flat round disc like this. Then I'm going to grab my rolling pin and use gentle pressure to roll this into a roughly 12 to 14 inch flat round crust for pizza.
Now what Brian's doing here is a very good little trick. This is a great way of not having to add excess flour to the dough and also keeping everything clean. Your rolling pin's not going to stick to the dough, and well, you're just not going to be making a mess. Now if you are using like a very hydrated dough recipe, I would suggest doing it by hand because this could be a little bit of a mess unless you use enough oil.
Roll it out the best you can. It should come pretty quickly. If you haven't rolled out pizza with parchment before, I totally get it. But like everything in this recipe, it's super forgiving, and whatever you end up with is going to work just fine. And after about 90 seconds of rolling this out, take a look. We've got a nice coating of olive oil all the way across the dough. It looks flat and even, and I'm feeling really happy with this one. So I'm going to set it aside and then roll out the second pizza ball. The parchment combined with the rolling pin here is an attempt to make this pizza faster and more simple for anyone with any skill level to make these, because as you might have noticed, I do a hand stretch pizza in a lot of these videos, and that's because it usually leads to great results, but it is in no way the only path to make a great pizza.
At the end of the day, it's all about practice, and the one thing that I love about cooking is that you always learn. You can always learn something new.
Once both of these dough balls are rolled out, we're going to let them rise here on the counter for 30 to 40 minutes while the oven gets hot. For that, I'm going to be preheating it to 550 degrees Fahrenheit or 287 C, and to set up the inside of this oven, I've got one rack about a third of the way up in the box. That's not right. And of course, next goes in my pizza steel. I love it. I love it. I love it. While the oven preheats, let's make some pizza sauce real quick.
Now, if you don't have a pizza steel at home, you can take your oven tray, flip it upside down, and stick that in and get it super, super hot. Normally, pizza trays are recessed quite a bit, so it's a little difficult to try to take them out. But if you flip them upside down, it's very easy to take them off the bottom. And of course, if you only have a pizza stone, this is okay as well, but many bakers and many pizza makers will swear by using a steel.
Into a high-sided container, I'm gonna measure one whole 28-ounce can of nice crushed tomatoes like these. Behind that goes 100 grams of tomato paste, 12 grams of salt, 20 grams of sugar, 2 grams of dried basil, 2 grams of dried oregano, 1 gram of chili flake, 2 grams of garlic powder, and 2 grams of onion powder. Now, I'm gonna grab my immersion blender real quick and give this a spin to break everything down. If you're thinking that this looks like a lot of pizza sauce, it is. This is a double batch, but I figure if I've got a can of nice tomatoes open here, I'm not gonna just put half of it in the fridge where it's gonna sit there for 2 weeks and remind me that I'm wasteful. Instead, I'll freeze the other half for next week's Wednesday night pizza party.
Even when making dinner, if you have the option on making more so you have leftovers for later, do it. It saves you time in the kitchen. Because otherwise, if you make just a little bit for now and then you want to make it again for later, you're going to be wasting more time in the kitchen. And normally, for us chefs, we always try to save the time that we have because we don't want to be spending even more time in the kitchen making the same thing again and again. And with a pizza sauce like this, just for your home, you don't need to cook it. A lot of pizzerias don't even cook their pizza sauce. They literally take it straight out of the can because the tomatoes are already cooked.
It's thick, it has some texture, and yes, this is going to be quite flavorful. Now, the last little prep item before we make this pizza is the cheese.
For everybody that loves cheese, be sure to hit the like button. And for everybody that's lactose intolerant, I feel for you because I couldn't live without it.
For that, I've got two of my all-time favorite pizza cheeses. The first one is a full-fat aged mozzarella cheese that I got from the deli counter at the grocery store, and yes, that tastes very good. The other cheese I got here is...
Brian just took a bite out of the cheese. What? Well, he is cooking for himself, so keep this in mind, all right? It's just not something that you do in the kitchen. Well, in the restaurants, you don't do this. This is a big no-no, yeah? You do not just take a bite out of the cheese because you're going to be serving it to everybody else.
Here is a fresh whole milk mozzarella cheese that's a little slippy, but yeah, this one looks good. Let's get a bite of that. Oh, okay, to get these ready for pizza, I'm gonna grate the aged mozzarella on my box grater on the largest hold sides to get a nice large grated cheese like this. I'd say you need about 200 to 250 grams per pizza if you wanna be properly cheesing. For the fresh mozz, I'm gonna cube that up into 1/2 inch size pieces real quick, or you could just tear this right onto the pizza if you didn't wanna do the added prep here. That's totally up to you. And of course, feel free to change it up cheese-wise here. Any cheese blend is gonna work on this pizza except for maybe a buffalo milk mozzarella that's designed for a hot oven, for a Neapolitan pizza. The moisture there is not going to have enough time to cook off properly, and we're going to have pizza soup. Not good. It's been about...
No, pizza soup is not a good thing. The thing is, though, where I am, I don't have a lot of options on different types of mozzarella. Basically, I can get fresh mozzarella, and I can get fresh mozzarella di bufala. Real buffalo mozzarella from Italy. There are a few little tips though if you are using like a fresh mozzarella instead of more of a drier mozzarella. One, you can cut the cheese up or divide it into smaller pieces. Take some paper towel and press it as hard as you can to try to extract the excess moisture, all the milk that's in the cheese. It's not technically a good thing because it is flavor, but it's either that or you have a lot of water standing on your pizza. You also don't want to be using a lot because, again, you can end up with, well, pizza soup.
About 30 minutes now since we rolled out these pizza crusts, or about 45 minutes in total since we started this process, and now it's time to build these pizzas. First thing down on this pizza, of course, is going to be that uncooked crushed tomato sauce. I'm going for about 3 to 4 tablespoons here all day, and for this style, I like to push this sauce all the way out to the edge of this crust because I'm not looking for a bready, thick crust pizza on a Wednesday night. This is a lighter, more sessionable style. Up next is the cheese, and the shred's going to go down first. Again, this is about 200, maybe 250 grams, depending on how cheesy you like it. And then comes the fresh mozzarella cubes.
One thing you want to keep in mind though is when putting the sauce and the cheese on that you don't add too much sauce and you don't add too much cheese. Because if you do, well, the cheese can just slide off, which does happen. You can also burn yourself, which is a bad thing. You don't want to do that.
Lastly comes Peps. These are the simple store-bought Boar's Head brand that I used in the delivery style pizza video, and I really like them. They've got more acidity, more heat, and overall just more flavor than generic pepperoni.
Now for everybody over here in Europe, pepperoni is not that popular and it's also not that easy to get. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, more than likely they won't have it. They'll have something that's similar to pepperoni, like chorizo here in the stores. They honestly do. They have chorizo and they call it pepperoni. It's not the same thing.
Once this is all pepped up, we're going to load it into a preheated oven and bake it for 6 to 7 minutes, depending on just how high your oven actually gets. And I guess this is a good time to mention that I like to bake my pizzas really dark. Some people out there on the internet think that they're burnt and they go way out of their way to tell me that. But I respect all kinds of pizzas out there, even if they're undermelted and pale and kind of gross looking. You do whatever you want to do, but here on this channel, I bake it dark. After 6 to 7 minutes in the oven, this pizza looks very, very good, in my opinion.
I mean, overall, when you look at the pizza, his pizza looks really good. It has a really nice color. If you want to be picky about it, yeah, the one pepperoni is burnt, this yes, and a little bit around this border of the pizza where the cheese has like melted off. If we compare this pizza to many other pizzas that we've reviewed, especially with Epicurious.
We're going to take this pizza out. You know, I'm a big fan of a lot of colour on a pizza. I don't like them too bland looking. This one's a little dark around the edges, that's fine.
The cheese is melty, the ronis are curled and just starting to sweat, and since there was a bunch of oil on that parchment paper, the dough kind of fried underneath and the crust is really well baked and quite crisp.
It looks like a delicious recipe and I would actually like to try this recipe.
The next pizza, of course, is going to get a bunch of pepperoncinis on top, which I think is the best pizza topping of all time, especially when paired with pepperonis. Throw on some pecorino or some Parmesan, bake it for 6 to 7 minutes, and there we go. You guys, for 1 hour of work, the texture and flavor of this pizza is unmatched in my opinion. Consider this a valuable new tool in your belt, not just for a weeknight, but in general when you want pizza. It's yeasty and crisp, and it just has the perfect balance of toppings and cheese, and everyone deserves to have a pizza party on demand. Even if it's 5 o'clock and you're really hungry, 6 o'clock isn't that far away, and this pizza's gonna meet you there.
Even more of a reason to use one beer with the pizza. You have 5 other beers that you need to finish. Now, if we look at Brian's pizza, it looks beautiful, especially when he takes this piece and folds it.
Let's eat this thing.
Brian, you did an excellent job and the recipe looks delicious. You can definitely tell when somebody knows what they're doing, unlike others.
You don't want to be too stingy with the sauce.
I don't really spread it out. I leave it in blobs.
Brian, if you do see this, I would love to collab with you, and for everybody that's watching this video, be sure to go over to Brian's channel and say hi from me, because he did an excellent job, and tell him that he did an excellent job as well. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. Be sure to check out this next video coming up here, and I'll see you guys again soon. Thank you everybody for supporting my channel. It means a lot to me. Until next time, take care.